news, everyone.
Let's get dangerous.
This is so cool.
I know.
It feels so right.
It's Jake Sealy.
He's opening our minds to new ideas. Kill him!
Who is that guy?
Your mama.
You just made the list!
Oh, wait, you're serious? Let me laugh even harder.
It's all in fantasy. Things of the range.
Sure, we talk about it all the time.
Really?
No, burn.
Game on, you Duckses! All in fantasy, as you heard, Tales of the Ranks. Myself, Jake Sealy, with Chris Meany at Chris Meany over at FTN. You can catch all my rankings and projections as we head into the final draft weekend, a final few draft days. This time next week, we'll be talking Thursday night football. Yes. It is here. And then Friday night football, too. As a reminder, Meany's Eagles out there in Brazil, as you said yesterday on Sirius XM. Did you put the enunciation on it on purpose yesterday when you said that?
I tried my best. It was a poor effort. You did a good job.
I think it was better than mine. That was a really poor effort. I can do like one accent, or actually, I guess, is it two? I can do New York and Italian, which is essentially like kind of 50-50.
Almost the same.
Yeah, I was going to say there's about a 50% overlay going both ways. But the latest news from the preseason, kind of as things wrap up, and as you can hear, Barkley is going crazy in the background. She cannot wait for football to start, just like the rest of us. As a reminder, this is also your very last week. Actually, the last episode. You can still do so. I'm going to have to give her a treat. Do so before next week. If you enter the contest, a reminder, go to Apple Podcast. That's where it's important. That's where we need you to subscribe and rate and review. Even if you listen on Spotify or, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of other platforms. But the Apple is what we're trying to gain traction to get the attention of people back. And rate, review, subscribe. If you give it 5 stars, that's an extra entry. It's in addition to your reviewing and subscribing. Screenshots of all of this at jsealy at The Athletic. If you tweet about it, you don't even have to send a screenshot because I see that. Although I might have to match up a name. So if your name's like weird on, like, I'm All In Kid, you could be like, oh, All In Kid, who the hell is that? If you're a name that I can't tell on Twitter, you probably need to screenshot that one as well to get you 5 entries. 3 different levels of a membership to FTN. Hand it out. And we're at like 12, 11. We're like right there for Madden. I'm probably going to do it anyway.
Come on. Get us in the top 10.
Just get us to the top 10, but I'll probably do it anyway. A code for Madden. Oh, Xbox, by the way. Hopefully you have Xbox. Did you shit them?
I am. I'm a PS guy, but Xbox is...
I have both, but who plays online on the PS5?
I do. I play online.
I don't know. I guess I should have probably waited before I got the code to download for Madden. I should have waited to find out if you had a PS5. But it's on Xbox. You can sell it. I don't know. Whatever.
Oh, you can cross-play now anyways.
No, I know.
Right? Yeah.
But Xbox Online experience is better. And we're not talking about this today. Who cares? Let's talk about things that are better in fantasy football. It's a week into the season, Meanie. It's not a week until these teams play, but it is a week until the season starts. And there's 3 big pieces of news. 2 big pieces are people not on the field. The other one is somebody who's going to be on the field for something that we might not want to see on the field. Although, maybe you do. But the 2 big ones off the top that aren't, Jamar Chase, Zach Taylor backtracked and said maybe he overstepped in what he was talking about, Jamar Chase being out there practicing, ready for week 1. Meany and I had Meany brought him on, but Meany and I talked to Jay Morrison, who covers the Bengals, used to be at The Athletic, Pro Football Network now, said he wasn't concerned last week. We haven't talked to him since. Maybe he is now. Are you, Meany? I know how I feel, but I want to see how you feel first.
I'm not. I'm more concerned about Aiyuk, but
we'll get to him in a second.
Man, it's getting there. You know what I mean? Like you just said, it's a week away. You hope that Jamar Chase is like working out at home or somewhere and not just walking around the field in shorts at Bengals practice, because it does concern me to take somebody in the first round, in the first 5 to 8 picks that is not practicing. And the soft tissue, a hamstring pull, all of a sudden it could be a 4 to 6 week thing. He's been hurt before. Joe Burrow's been hurt before. So now, like, I say that I'm not worried. But if I'm sitting there at 3, 4, and 5, I'm going Amon-Ra or Justin Jefferson after Tyreek or CD. And now I'm thinking about A.J. Brown, or if Breece and Bijan fall, I'm thinking there, or if I'm in the 8 and 9 spot, which I am in a lot of my drafts, and the talk in my drafts is that Chase is going to be available for me at 9.
Do you take
I may just go with Chase and be like, screw it. I'm taking this value at 9 because I know that he could be wide receiver 1 overall. Or I'm taking Taylor and Saquon and just saying, you know what? I don't want any risk in the first round, and I just want to eliminate it. I will be okay if I don't have Jamar Chase on my football team. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be fine where it could hurt me if something happened. But as of today, right now, like, if I would pick him at 8 or 9 if he was there. But like I said, 3, 4, 5, I'm going another way. I've actually moved him behind Justin Jefferson and Amon Ra.
So I know you said Amon-Ra St. Brown. Would you move him behind you? I know AJ Brown. I'm a little bit cooler, not by much. I keep going back to the pre-snap motion helping Devontae Smith, and something that you brought up and we're spot on about, to go back 2 years with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, that Devontae Smith could push and was like right there with AJ Brown on a per game basis towards the back half of that season. That's why I'm like, I can see that happening this year, not to the supreme detriment of AJ Brown. I still have AJ Brown at 7. Like, I'm not gonna be like, oh, I don't want AJ Brown. But the one that I do have in front of him, and I know a lot of people are concerned about his workload with a healthy Cooper Kupp. Would you think about Puka Nacua over Jamar Chase? Like, let's say let's say it's just wide receiver heavy. I know you said you probably, you know what? I'll phrase it that way. Meaning, you know how my rankings go. I go Christian McCaffrey, 5 wide receivers, and then the 4 running backs of Taylor, Bijan, Breece Hall, and Saquon Barkley. I have a share of kind of all of them. Actually, the only one I don't have a share of yet is Barkley, sadly enough. But the mix of all of them, and then I come back and start with Puka Nacua, AJ Brown. If you want to take AJ Brown, I'm not going to argue that. My point being is, would you go all 4 of those running backs and pull Chase down to that next tier if you're already thinking about AJ Brown, or is there only 1 or 2 of those running backs that you would take and then still take Jamar Chase?
Yeah, all those backs are on the same tier for me. Yeah, I mean, I would probably consider one of those running backs. Again, if I'm like pick 9 and Chase is falling that far, I don't think I would consider it. Yeah, I mean, I guess after that first 5, like you just mentioned, those 5 wide receivers. Mm-hmm. So like after those guys.
So Chase is still staying above those receivers.
Chase is in the 5.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I would go Puka. And I don't think I would go AJ over him either. That there is a drop off to me with those 2 guys. But AJ and Puka and Devontae Adams, I feel like those guys are in their own tier. I don't know if I'm putting London in there or Olave, but those guys are in their own tier. But I would think about the 4 running backs before I really kind of got into the rest of the wide receivers. But man, my goodness, like, again, what's he waiting for here? Like,
it's not
Cincinnati beat reporters outside of Jay, like Jay, like you just said with Jay. There's other guys in Cincinnati that feel like this has been an awful offseason, and there's a lot of, I don't know if turmoil is the right word, but there's a lot of, yeah, man, we'll just use turmoil. There's a lot of turmoil in the Bengals locker room. Like, guys want contracts, you know, and they don't have a history of paying. They don't have a history of just forking out.
Well, we don't really have a history of the NFL paying 2 years. 1 year.
Right.
You know, CeeDee Lamb, Brandon Aiyuk working. That's what he's trying to get done right now. Like 1 year, like 2 years out is.
He's got 2 years left on his deal.
That's a big ask.
And why he's not practicing.
Is Randy Moss his agent? Is that what it is? Is this like we're going to find out? Like, you remember Randy Moss wanted a new contract every other year.
Man,
like,
and Ocho Cinco said that
out.
he was saying with confidence, whether you believe him or not, but he was saying with confidence, like, he is not going to step on the field until he gets a new contract. So it's like,
I mean, if Ocho says it, like, I know he spends a lot of his time playing FIFA these days, but man, that's enough to make me hesitate. So I'm with you. I have Jamar Chase at 5. I still have him on a tier ahead of the Puka Nacua, AJ Brown. If you want to put him in that conversation, take those running backs, even take a handful more. Like right now, for the rankings for those 4 running backs, if you want to slide Chase behind them, I don't even hate it. Like,
I don't either. Like, eliminate the risk.
Well, so, and this is why, like, we're getting super close. You bring it up, the injuries and all that type of stuff. There's the counter argument, like, we know he's not getting hurt. But now this time, this final week, like, okay, you could still get hurt in practice. It doesn't happen that often, though. You still want to see him out there practicing with the team before the season starts. Although I'm not super concerned about Jamar Chase with Joe Burrow and this kind of connection. Right. If this was Justin Jefferson holding out with Sam Darnold, different story, because I want to see some rapport built. I know Burrow and Chase could step on the field with zero practice on either side
Right.
and be fine. Like, of
We've
course
seen
we
it.
want to see it. So that's why I'm concerned but not worried, if that makes sense. But it's
Yeah.
enough to make him slide down in a similar fashion to Kyren Williams, who we're going to talk about, but not yet. I'm going to pull these two together because I want to talk about Aiyuk before we get to Williams. But Aiyuk is something we've been dealing with this entire offseason, and he's still not out there, and he's still not practicing with the team, and he's still waiting on his contract, and now we're a week away from Brandon Aiyuk, potentially. Is he – so I originally had Brandon Aiyuk and Deebo Samuel almost essentially back-to-back because I look at the efficiency of Aiyuk and it's like, you know what, I could see a little more targets going his way, including Kittle. Like, just more to the passing game and other options and pulling back on Christian McCaffrey just a little bit, just a smidge, just to keep McCaffrey kind of healthy. Like, they keep talking it up, and I don't think they're going to really be able to stop it. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's open. Brock Purdy's looking for him. But I could see Aiyuk taking a little bit more of a step forward, as in the efficiency helps him. Deebo Samuel with the rushing helps him. They're both wide receiver ones, fringe wide receiver ones. I've now pushed Aiyuk all the way down to 17, sandwiched between DK Metcalf, Devontae Adams, Rashee Rice. I think that's a fair spot, and I think at that point, if you, again, similar to Jamar Chase, if you want to argue and say, I'll take Rice, I'll take DJ Moore, I'll take Devonta Smith, Jalen Waddle, those twos on their teams, I'll take Terry McLaurin. I want to be like, you're wrong. I think at that point, though, you're saying, I want the safer play, because I think you would agree with me, but maybe not, that still of that entire group, Aiyuk still has the higher ceiling. He was borderline top 10 as it was last year.
Yeah, like if Aiyuk was under contract, I would probably have him at – you said him and Debo were super close. They were close to me. I have Debo at 14. Man, I think I'm a little too high on Adams, man. I might be on an island here with Adams. But yeah, I would have Aiyuk at like 12 or 13. As like a high-end wide receiver 2 or low-end wide receiver 1, right? He's not going to get the same type of volume as the other guys around him. Like Adams is probably going to – like if these guys were both healthy, Adams would get, like 50, 60 more targets. But he's just super efficient in that offense, right? It's everybody in the offense, and Shanahan and Brock Purdy wasn't even close to the pass attempts as other guys, and he's among the leaders in everything, passing yards and touchdowns and yards per attempt. So, but I have him a little bit lower, so I have him at 22. I have Higgins and Devontae and Waddle ahead of him, DK, DJ Moore, Collins. So I have.
So if you knew he had a contract, Drake London, Garrett Wilson range,
paid today, I would put him up. Yeah, I would put him up in the Olave London.
And I had him in front of London and Garrett Wilson because I was more comfortable with his team, quarterback situation as who he is versus I'm hoping Drake London can be. I'm hoping Garrett Wilson can be. But I knew it with Aiyuk, and that's why.
Yeah, I agree. And with Aiyuk, I just feel like, I told you this last week when we did the show. I feel like he's just, I don't think he's a happy human at the moment. Like, I think he really wants out of San Fran. And he's been talking about that for the past couple of months. Like, they don't want me. I want out. I want a new scenario. But then Pittsburgh's not good enough for him. Cleveland's not good enough. Don't want to go to New England. Quarterback plays brutal. Like, what does this guy want? Like, it's crazy. So I feel like maybe he would sit out. And again, another guy that I'd be fine without having. Like, there comes to a point where, can I get him in the 4th as my 3rd wide receiver? I'll do it. But I'm not taking him as my wide receiver 1, and I'm not taking him, and I'm a little hesitant to take him in the 3rd round. Yeah, as like,
okay, well then here's one for you.
Wide receiver 2.
If you're in the 3rd round, and you can't be like, well, I would wait one more and blah blah. No, I want to say, like, if you're in the 3rd round, because again, we're talking for the majority of the people. This is what will happen: is these quarterbacks will start going. If you're in the 3rd round, do you take Aiyuk or Josh Allen? I don't want to say option C because I know there's an option C option here, but if you're on the board, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, the first quarterback off the board, or Brandon Aiyuk, which way would you draft, Chris Meany?
I may take one of the quarterbacks, and it's not my style, but it's kind of where I'm at right now with Brandon Aiyuk.
That's not worried.
I just want to avoid these potential landmines, man.
Would you take Kelsey or Laporta?
No, I guess I would just risk Aiyuk at that point. I don't want to take one of those tight ends. Put me in a tough spot here. But
I mean, these are the calls people have to make. That's why I'm
asking.
Sure,
they are. But if you gave me another option, take another wide receiver. That's what I would do.
Well,
but I'd go quarterback and bypass tight end.
pull in the other piece of news, and probably the one that made people the most scared, is the fact that Kyren Williams is going to be returning punts. We talked about this on SiriusXM if you heard, but the phrasing and whatever you want to dive into it, Sean McVay said we want to get the ball in his hands. This is a way to get the ball in his hands more. He also has faith in Blake Corum and Ronnie Rivers. If you missed SiriusXM, you heard what I say is, first of all, let's take Sean McVay with a grain of salt because he's talked up every running back in the history of this team, including Zach Evans, including Jake Funk. So let's chill out on talking up Ronnie Rivers. I do believe in Blake Corum being a threat, and this has been my gut feeling the entire time since Blake Corum was drafted, that I am hesitant on Kyren Williams. That being said, I did not knock Kyren Williams out from the RB1 tier. The only thing I did was because of this risk, and I'm not that worried about the punts. I saw some people talking about he returned all of the punts for the first 3 weeks, and then he was still like, look, that was the first 3 weeks before he was the guy all the time,
and then
he pulled back.
After that, though.
Yeah, so like the whole he was used in punts, I don't think that's a fair argument to come back and say not to be worried. My worry doesn't even lie with the punts. I mean, I see that, I'm like, ooh, eyebrow raise, but a little bit enough to say, like, we're now increasing a potential risk for injury now on top of it, because the more times you touch the ball, the more potential to get hurt. It goes back to, he did talk up Blake Corum, and I started this by saying, let's chill out on McVay and the fact that he talks up everybody. But I'm not the biggest Corum fan pre-draft. I do like the situation where he lands, and what his role could be is what always concerned me about Kyren Williams. I said this to you yesterday on SiriusXM, and I'll say it here on this podcast meeting. The touches, punts, irregardless, to get like, or I hate that word, and I just did it. I can't believe I said irregardless. Regardless of the punts, gosh, I hate myself right now. Regardless of the punts, is that I was concerned Blake Corum not even gets a share to keep Kyren healthy. My concern is the share ends up being goal line work, and that Kyren Williams becomes James Cook, which is not a bad thing. We're talking about a fringe RB1, which is now where I have Kyren Williams, but fringe RB1 who's been drafted and treated as a fringe fringe first round pick, top 6-7 running back. That's my concern, and it has really not much to do with the punt returns.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not overreacting on the punt returns. You bring up a good point that he did it last year. So what? But at the same time, like it's really not what you want. Especially if you're going to invest in a running back in the first couple rounds, is potentially your RB1, most likely, right? Your RB1. If you are drafting him, unless you're running back heavy and use your 2, and then maybe it's like, whatever, he's my 2, and I know he has upside to be a top 5 guy, but you don't want him on the field and taking hits. It's just the way his body type is. I said this to you again on XM, like the build of Kyren Williams, first year hurt, right? Couldn't really get on the field last year, took over for Cam Akers, and then had all these touches and then got hurt. And then all of a sudden was just like, wow, this guy's getting CMC workload, putting up CMC numbers. And then I also said to you that in that playoff game against the Lions, he also got hurt. I don't think if the Rams won the game, like he would even been available to play in the next round for them. So like, that's concerning. Like, and that's like McVay, like, don't you want to keep this guy healthy as possible? Like, what are we doing here? Putting him on punts. But, they had 28 punt returns last year. Maybe he gets 20, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he, like you said, like it's like last year, only a couple weeks. But the Corum thing is very interesting because of the history of Sean McVay, not just talking up backs, but kind of like quickly rotating through them. Like, hey, who's the hot hand here? It's like Darrell Henderson, Sony Michel, right? Those are other guys that he really, even Ronnie Rivers had a little bit of run for a bit. And of course, Akers and then Kyren. So drafting a guy again in the 3rd round as what you said yesterday, one of the better short yardage running backs, right? In the class, and what he did last year in college, he was a touchdown machine. I think he had 22 touchdowns, scored a touchdown every game, I believe, for Michigan. And he can certainly handle some touches, short yardage stuff. And it's been interesting. Like, I agreed with what you said yesterday about how Kyren not really involved, or Corum not really involved through the air. But I remember hearing something from Kyren like a month after the draft that he was like really impressed with Corum running routes and catching passes, and Corum's going to do everything. And it's like, wow, like, man, maybe this will just be like a 60-40, 70-30 type split to start, and could get into the 60-40 range, especially, if Kyren can't stay healthy and he's not 100%. So I am I'm concerned just overall. I don't have a lot of shares anyways. Like you, kind of taking wide receivers in that range. And, I have him at 11 now. So you sold me on ETN. I always had Jacobs and Pacheco over him. I always was in the camp of those guys ahead of Kyren. But this is, again, not what you want to hear. And if he's not getting goal line work, or even if he's just getting taken off a little bit, like Bijan Robinson for Algier, that's going to be extremely frustrating.
It is. And for everybody out there, yeah, the rankings for me, me and I are pretty close, different on a few, but I mean, pretty close. I go Henry, ETN, Gibbs, Pacheco, Jacobs, Kyren, Achane, Mixon, Cook. I do like Mixon a lot. You know this. I actually want Mixon to be higher, but I think Mixon is like the safer, hey, I know he's going to get to work 17 weeks. I know he's going to be out there. The passing game is going to be a little bit of a hit. I actually think the passing game could come down from what it was with the Bengals because of this offense. Like, CJ Stroud doesn't need to dump it down to him, ever. And he will, but, now what if the receptions are 17? I don't think it could be that bad, potentially, but I guess it could.
Yeah, but it may not be 50. It may not be, because they have like 3 legit threes.
Yeah, what? And then you have Schultz. Like, why do you ever need to throw in a mix? Like, what do you ever? I mean, again, it's not like you're going to eliminate the play from your playbook, but
no,
that's the only reason that I have Mixon there. I actually love some of the rushing props for Joe Mixon, but that's the range. And I kind of said this as I'm going to tie in Kyren Williams. Now to bring it full circle is what Meany just said. This is the same thing I said on Sirius XM. But if you don't want to take them, you don't have to take them. You could just draft elsewhere. And that's the biggest answer I think that I go with, is that looking at the overall rankings, I do have him running back 11. That puts him right on the cusp, early, late, whatever you want to look, depending on your league, but basically right around the 2-3 turn in your league, whether you're 10 or 12 teams. He's right there around the 24 to 28 range. Yeah. If you don't want to take him, take Chris Olave, DK Metcalf. Start the quarterbacks. Take Travis Kelce. Like, again, we're not doing it, but there's options where you don't have to say, you know what, I'm forced to take Kyren. Now, if Kyren falls to the late third, now you can't pass that up at that point. At least, and again, this could bomb. A lot of picks bomb. I'm not trying to brag. I played an industry league. You know this. I mean, I played an industry league, and I'm going to bring up why I'm not bragging, because my first round pick was one that everybody hated me for recommending and being on board with, because the year before that, the running back was great, and he was playing with Peyton Manning. If you don't know who I'm talking about, it's CJ Anderson. I started the flex league. It was a flex league draft, which is now in the 11th year. With C.J. Anderson first round, Justin Forsett the second round. C.J. Anderson was a bust. Justin Forsett got hurt and missed almost the entire season, and I still won. Like, obviously, that's hard to do, and I wouldn't recommend. Like, but if Kyren's there in the third round and he busts, like, that's not the end of your draft. There's too much upside if he falls that far.
I agree, and it's good to bring that up, because it's not the end of the world. Like, you still feel, you're hanging out with us and you have your targets in the mid round, and, you're hitting your running backs, you're working the waiver wire, things like that. Guy like a Kyren falling to the third or an Aiyuk falling to the fourth. Like, I think at that point, like, there's really good value. Again, we're adjusting our ranks. Like, we think Aiyuk could be a top 12 wide receiver, but right now, like, we don't have him ranked that way, but he could finish there and you could get him as wide receiver 20, 21, 22. I think the bigger risk is like spending that top 5 pick on like a Chase, you know what I mean? And this guy's just like not hanging around. That's a little bit harder to recover from, but I think you said it
Chase made it to the second round. No,
then again, even 9, like I know we talked about this, but if you're at the back end of the first round and he's available to you, how do you not
take him? Breaking-ish news. That's with Brandon Aiyuk. Let me see if this makes you say not even the fourth. Hold on. From Tim Kawakami for The Athletic. It was very dramatic. It was inevitable. It was understandable. But like almost everything else for the last few months with this problem, it got them nothing. Seemed to be more about a pending breakup than an imminent breakthrough.
This is what I'm saying, man. Like,
does that make you say not even fourth round?
This is what I'm saying. Like, Aiyuk, there's something else going on. I just feel like either he thinks he's the best wide receiver in the world, or he's just like, and I'm not totally happy here in San Fran. Like, CMC and Debo and Kittle are getting all my work. Like, when I saw him after the Lions game, when they beat Detroit to go to the Super Bowl, and the first thing I heard out of anyone from the 49ers camp was Aiyuk being frustrated with his target volume and his looks. That to me is just red flag. Like, I am one of those guys, and I know wide receivers are divas, but I'm one of those guys like, man, be happy. You're going to the dance. You're going to the Super Bowl despite you only having 3 catches. Like, maybe next week it'll work out for you. Like, whatever, man. It is not about your and it's not about like, but that's not, for me, that's not what it's about. Like, he is just such a me guy, and he really is. And it's, you can't convince me otherwise.
Do you know most people wouldn't know that? But like, despite only getting 105 targets, and I say only, he still had 100 targets. For people that had 100 targets in the NFL, what was it, like 30? It looks like about 32, if I'm doing it right, as wide receivers, obviously other positions, but it looks about 30, 32, 33, somewhere around there. 105 targets, 7th in the league in receiving yards, 1,342. If you go down in yards for 105 targets, you have to go all the way to Justin Jefferson with 100 targets to find somebody with fewer targets than him inside the top 20 in receiving yards. Like, that's how far you have to go. Super efficient. I get it. Like, I get that. Like, this is why I was excited if he got 120 targets, just 15 more, and then almost 1 per week. And you're talking about 15 more targets, and now he's probably pushing the 1,500 yard mark. So I get it, but I'm with you. Like, I guess some people want different things. Like, I'm with you. Like, I'd be like, man, I'm in a great spot. Going to the Super Bowl contending team. I'd rather be playing here than the freaking stupid Giants right now.
Yeah, I get, and he was like, oh, no chance I'm going to the Pats.
You want to go play for the Raiders right now? Like, what?
Right. Like, I don't want to play for New England. Maybe wants to play with his buddy Daniels in Washington, but really, how great is that situation? I think he either wants to be
want to play in New
like
England?
a 1 where he is just like I'm getting 10 targets a game, or pay me as one of the best wide receivers in football, and I'll stick here in San Fran and be super efficient. So I don't know. The Niners have some things going on right now, and like Trent Williams apparently is not close either. And I know they've done this before. They have a history. Debo was signed, I think like end of July. I believe this time last year, Nick Bosa was signed. There was some talk about him, and then George Kittle. Like, even George Kittle, I think he was on the Rich Eisman show, and he was saying, like, look, this is what we do. Like, this is what happens in San Fran. Like, as long as I've been here, there's been tons of guys that have been holding out, wanting new contracts. Looks like they're not going to play, and then in the final week before the season, all of a sudden they get paid. So there's still a possibility. But if I'm the Niners, I'm focusing more on Trent Williams, because I know that offense does not run smoothly without Trent Williams on the field. So that's another thing that they have to figure out. When even Aiyuk get paid, and then Trent Williams not on the line. We've seen Brock Purdy, like, he hasn't looked good without Trent Williams. So it's a mess. Easy pass. I'm not taking him. 4th round, 4th wide receiver. It's the only way I would do it.
So you started wide receiver, and now he's your 4th.
Yeah, and then I'd have no running back, so my team would be awful anyway. So yeah, no, I'm not rolling the dice on him, I don't think.
All right, a bit more news as we get out of here, and hopefully into your drafts this weekend with some breaking news on Chase and Aiyuk, and not more bad news before we hit the weekend. But Samaje Perine to the Chiefs. My feelings are, he is the second man up now on this team. Could steal a few off Pacheco. Like, I just knocked Pacheco behind ETN just with this news. I had them reversed at the time. The guy catches 90% of his passes. But wait, which running back am I talking about? And that's the issue. Is Pacheco or Perine. Again, Perine's more of like, obviously pick him up or stash alongside like a Jordan Mason if something was to happen to Jordan Pacheco. But I'm not like going like nuts here. Like, I'm not dropping. We'll put it this way. Shallow league, Blake Corum or Perine. I actually keep Corum.
Yeah, I would keep Corum too, but I did move Perine up a lot higher than I thought I would. It's still like a last round pick. I have him next to like Antonio Gibson. Like, I'd rather have him than Chuba Hubbard. I got like Jaleel McLaughlin in there. So actually, yeah, like,
what do you have him at running back? I have Samaje Perine actually at 44, 1 spot behind Mason.
If I'm 45. So we're on the same page there. And I think he's okay target. Yeah. You and I are on the same page. It's nice.
I have in front of Chase Brown.
So I have Chase a touch higher. But, in terms of just value and where these guys are going, I would much rather have Samaje. I mean, we've talked about Chase just rising up draft boards like crazy. And again, back to Jay Morrison, like, he had a lot of nice things to say about the veteran Zach Zach Moss. Even though we don't love him and he's not super efficient, hey, neither was Joe Mixon in that offense, and he had all the touches on the ground near the
Zach
goal
Moss
line.
says it's like you can be an above average running back, which that's what I keep saying about him. It's not like, oh my God, he's awful. He's above average. A lot of running backs are above average. But if he stays healthy, that's the biggest thing. It's like it's that I always pushed back on Zach Moss because people wanted to treat him as a potential top 15 talent. I just don't think that's who he is. At the same time, if he stays healthy, as you just mentioned, hell, Rashad White was one of the most inefficient running backs running the ball that we've seen in the past decade, and the receiving game made up for it. Well, Zach Moss can catch the ball too, so don't hate it. Yeah.
The one thing I'll say one more about Perine, I was just looking, and last year was actually really bad for Jerick McKinnon. But a couple of years ago, he had 9 receiving touchdowns. And I know that was basically Pacheco's first year. So it took some time. Last year, he played 12 games. He got 25 passes. But that's still 12 games. Like if you give Perine 17, like there's a world where he catches 30 balls. And he's involved in the red zone and he's catching the passes. It doesn't cool me off. Pacheco, like you only flipped him one. ETN, I agree. Like ETN doesn't have anybody to worry about in the backfield. He catches all the passes and he improved near the goal line last year. Like, but I just feel like that's why I think Perine is a last pick, PPR league. Maybe get into a pinch, flex, and what you said, next man up. Like that's a guy that we've seen before in a 2 to 3 week sample size. Handle 15 plus opportunities on a really good offense.
We are going to talk about next man up before we get out of here with 2 more pieces of news as we do. Actually, 3. The first being Russell Wilson named the starter, in case you missed that. Not really like anything we didn't expect this entire time. Doesn't do anything to change the rankings, but in case you missed it, and we've talked about at length, that schedule is super scary. So even in Superflex, not that excited about Russell Wilson. And even if you take a flyer that Justin Fields takes over at some point, again, that schedule, it's okay to say 1 or 2 of those teams might not be scary to face, but there's a lot more than just 2. There's about 7 that he has to face in there. So for all of that to go sideways, don't think that's going to happen. I would say more the offense for the Steelers goes sideways, potentially. Dalvin Cook did sign with the Cowboys. You know my answer, Meanie. And if people didn't hear on Sirius XM, I still have Zeke first, still have Dowdle second, now have Cook third. I actually think Cook takes more rushing away and doesn't do a lot in the passing game, but I think that hurts both Zeke and Dowdle. And Dowdle's passing game probably still there a bit, maybe now because there's all 3 of them. The answer really is I have none of them inside the top 40, and I want nothing to do with this backfield.
Yeah, I don't either. I have Zeke, and I thought I would bump down Dowdle a little bit more, but Zeke and Dowdle in the 40s, and then Cook like 51. So like they're all kind of bunched in together. I just think that's
we finally don't agree. I have Dowdle at 54. He's not in the 40s.
Okay, so yeah, it's just all it's just going to be a mess, right? I expect Zeke
I'll give you an example.
have the goal line
Sorry to
roll,
cut
so
you
I
off.
think he's interesting.
No, so yeah, good goal line roll, interesting for Zeke. I didn't want to gloss over that. Sorry, I wanted to jump in to give you a flyer because you said that in the rankings, and I don't want to lose my spot. Sorry, but I hope you also paid attention to what Meany just said. Dalvin Cook, though, real quick, because you said that. Now I'm going to change it because I want to make sure people notice that. Are you concerned Dalvin Cook takes any of those goal line touches from Zeke?
No, but I think that he would be next in line. I think he would get him over Rico.
So basically, if Zeke gets hurt, Cook steps in, and Dowdle just stays being Dowdle.
Yeah, that's kind of what I feel like when they brought in Dalvin. It's like maybe Zeke is like what they expected, right? Is a guy that they could maybe trust to catch passes or
you have 2 potentially washed running backs. You might not have one. Let's
bring in one more, and we'll have 2. We'll have 2 wash running backs that have been awesome in the NFL. Maybe they can just be like, an
2
RB2
potential Hall of Fame running backs.
Right? Yeah, Zeke, man, I still think he can be really, really efficient in red zone
What's
packages.
That saying? If you have 2 washed running backs, you have none. Like, is that what it is?
Or maybe you just combine them together, and then you have like.
We could Voltron this backfield and add in Deuce Vaughn in the passing game and his burst.
Yeah.
Hell,
yeah, absolutely. You could have a nice monster there, but yeah, it's. I don't know. Like what I said to you about Dalvin Cook, man. Like last year, it does feel like just a write-off. He had 4 straight 1,000-yard seasons. He just turned 29. He hardly touched the football last year. Just 1 game with the Jets where he had double-digit carries, and I think like 5 of the 15, it was 5 or fewer. So he wasn't even really given an opportunity on a team that had no quarterback play and a brutal offensive line. So there is a world where maybe he does look better than the 2. but I just can't see it ever being like, this is a whole lot of Dalvin Cook today. Zeke is going to get touches. Rico's probably going to look the best between the tackles. But I think that if I'm taking a shot of one of the three, it still would be Zeke and goal on roll, and then maybe Calvin maybe Dalvin at the end. But yeah, the answer is none. Like, I'm not interested.
Like, I would rather, to go back to, I'd rather take Mason and Perine than Zeke at this point. Because
I already have too much Zeke. Like, I don't have a ton, but like, that's it.
Well, okay, like, real quick. So this is why I jumped in, because I never even got to it. Like, what I was going to ask you, to go back to Rico Dowdle as being the two, assumably the two, I would still take a third and Jalen Wright over him at this point.
Yeah, like what's the upside with Rico if he's not going to get the goal line roll, and then you have two veteran backs? Like, that's a thing too. Like, what Jerry's maybe thinking, like, oh man, Rico's not this good. They didn't draft anyone. We brought Zeke, and like, Rico is not. Like, again, I don't think they're watching Zeke and be like, oh man, he is just a lot worse than we thought. I think that they're thinking that Rico is only okay, and we're going to just need some more depth, and Dalvin's better than Royce Freeman. So yeah, it's just a mess.
I was just going to say, we have no idea what Jerry's thinking at any time.
You're right about that.
He waited forever to give CeeDee Lamb a huge contract. Like, we didn't know that was coming. Shocker. All right. One more little bit of news, but it caught my eye. Noah Brown went to the Commanders. Noah Brown was cut by the Texans. We remember those 3 games of Noah Brown last year, and that's why it caught my eye, mostly because it's going to take him a little time to get into the new offense, and this is also a new offense for the Commanders. But that being said, I'm taking a lot of flyers on Dyami Brown right now, but if Dyami Brown falters, Jamison Crowder doesn't take that role. Zacchaeus doesn't take that role. McCaffrey doesn't take that role. Why? Because those are basically 3 of the same guys playing a certain role. Whoever wins out, probably McCaffrey at some point, but that's the slot role. Somebody still needs to play outside in that perimeter role. So are you taking shots? Last pick, maybe just if you're in a deeper league, not taking a shot yet, but remembering you're going to grab on waiver. If something frees up, you get an injury, go stash Noah Brown before anybody else does.
Yeah, I mean, why not? It's a pick. It's a pick that you said, right, it's not going to cost you anything. It's like a last round pick. There's an opportunity there. And you and I were kind of putting cold water on McCaffrey. Like, I think it could happen midway through the season, and maybe towards the end of the season. But this is a guy that played quarterback a couple of years ago. So there's a lot for him to learn. And they still have veterans on the field, right? Like Crowder, and then Zach Ertz and Austin Eckler catching all these what seems to be short passes. If that's the way Washington's actually going to run their offense, get the ball out quick with like some RPOs and screens, it's going to benefit some of these other guys. But Brown, yeah, there's an opportunity there. Like, Dyami Brown hasn't really shown us much in the few years. Like, he's a guy that can get down the field, and Daniels does have a nice arm. We did see one
him as a starter this preseason.
Yeah, they are
resting with the starters.
Yeah, and that's where they're at. Right. I know they tried to get Aiyuk, but they don't have any pieces, I guess, to flip. That's
of course. Aiyuk just throws this all out the window.
I would take a shot. Like, he's in the range with me, like DeMarcus Robinson and Yossi Vaj and Polk. I'm just taking like Dyami and even Noah Brown. Like, just take like your last pick and try to grab somebody in a room that's weak, right? Then could be the guy or the one or two. Like,
what do these wide receivers sound like here? Like, these in the name. You want to talk about this? Mine, Brandon Cooks in order. Brandon Cooks, Rashid Shaheed, Darnell Mooney, Gabe Davis, Dyami Brown, DeMarcus Robinson.
I like taking flyers on all of those.
Yeah, but what are all those wide receivers?
Boomer bust. They're boomer bust guys. Yeah.
Perimeter guys, boomer bust. You might get a 0, you might get an 18.
Yeah.
And you might be pulling your hair out.
There's one thing I want to bring up to you before you wrap up. Okay. Any concerns about Waddle? Like, nobody's talking about Jalen Waddle, but this guy hasn't practiced in like a month. And I just saw something again this morning that Waddle's there's nobody's even talking about what the injury is. Like, Miami beat reporters don't know what the injury is. It's undisclosed, but he's just not practicing. And there was a report last week from somebody at The Athletic that you work with, I forget his name, and he said there's as many as 20 guys that are hurt on the Dolphins. This is like a long list of injuries, but like, nobody's really talking about Waddle as a guy. Like, I like to see him practice. I'd like to know what the injury is, but I have some shares. Like, right now, I'm not bypassing him, but it's just thought it's interesting. Like nobody's really talking about why he's hurt and why he's not practicing.
So interesting enough, I'm glad you brought that up because depending on when you're listening to this, they're updated by this point. So when you are listening to this, Jalen Waddle is now wide receiver 24 for me, and I seem to have
you're
been
concerned. He's going like wide receiver 13, 14. He's going.
I know. I had him at 22. I moved him down 2 spots, even because it continued. Like if we're concerned about Aiyuk and we're going to keep making him slip down the ranks as we get closer. Why are we not also like? I'll give you the names right in front of him. I already had Devontae Adams, Rashee Rice, DJ Moore, Devonta Smith. I had him 1 spot behind Devonta Smith because I'm like, they're the same guys, in my opinion. They're 2s who could push for 1-ish numbers, but they're 2s. In front of them, 1s. DK Metcalf, Chris Olave, Rashee Rice, 1. I know Travis Kelce, but they're 1 wide receivers. So that's where I was like, you know what? Before I start dipping into the 2s, and yes, he could surpass them, but it's a big tier that you and I have talked about as well. But now, with this news, still a 2. I'm pushing it behind Higgins, who I keep saying was top 20 2 years in a row. And then Terry McLaurin. I would take Terry McLaurin the 1 before I took Jalen Waddle at this point.
Yeah, I like it. And it's kind of where I have him too is in that range. I have him at 19, but I may need to like Devontae, T. Higgins, Ayuk, Terry McLaurin, like all those guys in the same range. And like if I'm drafting tonight, I'm not drafting Jalen Waddle. The last, I just searched him again, Twitter, just trying to find some news. And yesterday in practice, he had a sleeve on his left calf. So that must be the injury, whether that's a grade 1 and grade 2 or soft tissue.
I don't want the leg injuries to continue with Waddle. So that doesn't make me feel much better.
Yeah. I have enough shares. So I don't need to get any more, but that's good to bring him up because he's going really early. And that's just, again, you just listed off a bunch of names that are very similar and they're healthy right now. So why not just start strong in your draft?
Right. Well, if you don't start strong, and as we get out of here, and you want some sleepers, not sleepers, but backup options, maybe the lead option doesn't start off strong, which also, by the way, hopefully you're starting off strong in Survivor. I forgot to mention that. Keep hammering this. If you want big prize payout, if I could say that, in Survivor, the Pro Football Contests are back in Vegas. Circa Survivor, Circa Millions. Record 16 million. I don't know how times I say that. Like every time I'm like, I'm entering this contest and guaranteed prizes. I know there's 2 ways to win, no rake. Circa Survivor contest. It's in here, but you know how to play Survivor. Circa Survivor, you 1 team each week, no point spread. You just pick in advance. Hopefully you get at least to week 14 and a chance to win the 16 million in prizes. The last person to win it all, 10 million in guaranteed. That's not Brandon Aiyuk money, but it's a lot. With Circa Millions, you can make 5 picks against the spread each week and get your share of 6 million guaranteed, and that has quarterly and full season payouts. Enter Nevada, play from anywhere. Circasports.com to sign up for more details and everything. But before we get out, ranking the backup running backs. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Actually, look at that. I picked out the 16 that weren't already in timeshares that you might be using or might be behind somebody and on a team that you're like, don't care. Like Eric Gray, not on this list. Tyrone Tracy, not on this list. It's the Giants and probably a split between them. But there's 16. It's interesting. That was exactly half the league. And we're not going to go through all 16. But meaning you see the list. I will rattle off the names if everybody wants real quickly. If not, just jump ahead 30 seconds on the podcast. But no particular order. Actually, the order was by division as I was going through, as you'll see. Ray Davis, Braylon Allen, Chase Brown, Justice Hill, Bigsby, Pierce, Sermon, Gainwell, Ty Chandler, Bucky Irving, Jamal Williams, Tyler Algier, Corum, Charbonnet, Jordan Mason, and Trey Benson. Your top 5. So you don't have to go through. Those are all of them. And I think just by my response to Jamal Williams, some of them are going to be much better than the others. But who is your top 5? Because I think the obvious one is Jordan Mason because it's the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan. Or is it not?
No, he's definitely in the 5. Like I actually don't have a lot of Corum and Benson because I feel like their draft price is pretty high, but Corum's got to be
regardless
inside the
of
top
price.
5. Yeah, in no particular order, like Corum, Bucky Irving. I like Ray
Mason.
Davis, man. I think Ray Davis should be in there, and then Jordan Mason, and then I would say Algier, yeah, just because.
So Mason, Corum, Algier, Irving, and Ray Davis.
Yeah.
Top 5.
I think that Chase Brown
No
is certainly
Charbonnet?
going to have a role. No Charbonnet.
No Chase Brown.
New regime there. I'd be interested to see if they give him some touches. McDonald has talked up Zach Charbonnet, but he's also said so many good things about Kenneth Walker. When he talks up Charbonnet, he's just like, man, he's a dude that comes to play and practices hard. It's like, great. So I wouldn't put him in there, even though I like the talent. I just think, it's going to be hard for him to find a decent workload. Chase Brown, even though we don't love the ADP, like he's going to catch some passes out of that backfield. It's a pass-happy offense. You can get like 30 grabs, maybe some red zone packages, not goal line stuff. But the guys that are the lottery tickets are Corum, Jordan Mason, even Algier, right? If he's actually going to be involved or something happened to Bijan, we already know he has 1,000 yards on his resume. And then I would say like Ray Davis just with the Bills, and I know that they want to run the football this year. So he's like really the next man up, where they've been cheap on their backup running backs over the years, like Damian Harris and Latavius and whatever. So he's like the clear next man up guy. But again, you are dealing with Josh Allen.
Yeah, I'm going very similar to yours, mostly because of teams. I would actually order them: Mason, Corum, Algier, Bucky Irving, Ray Davis. I actually think Irving could actually be an RB3 as it is, but hopefully you have a really good draft this weekend. Get a few of those, like 2 or 3 maybe, especially if you go.
Jalen Wright, I'll add too, Jake.
Jalen, yeah, that's even like for that's.
I know he's got a lot
time
to
share.
Yeah, he has
he's technically. That's I avoided the Dolphins because it's like as it is, it's HN Mostert.
Sure.
There's no backup, but like you're right, he
needs
is
to happen.
the backup if he. But yes, Jalen Wright should be on a list to remember, and this podcast should be on the list. Reminder to enter the contest. This is the last podcast before we announce the winner next week. And check out Chris Meany at FTN over at Chris Meany. The rankings and projections over at The Athletic. Play with them before the weekend starts. Change the projections to see how things roll out for your draft, and hopefully we win some championships this week. Next week, Tuesday, Wednesdays, we're going to start. We're talking waivers and rankings next week.
Baby,
It's
here.
already here. And no more sleep. Have a good day.